What is magic? Magic is the hidden knowledge of the ages, just waiting to be discovered by those of us willing to dedicate decades of our lives to unlocking these ancient secrets. Let the lessons begin.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Magick Witchcraft and Occultism. This episode is supplementary. It's my 5th book review, and we will be covering the Grimoire for the Apprentice Wizard. Now, we were supposed to do the Superconscious Mind, but it's still not done, and at this rate I'm not sure when it's going to be done, so we might be doing book reviews for a few weeks. Now, before we begin, please remember to like, share, subscribe, click the little notification bell so you never miss an episode and I stop getting lost in YouTube algorithm. Then I'd really appreciate that. Alright, let us begin. I'd like to start by giving you a little background information on the book. It was published in 2004 by the Grey School of Wizardry. It was published by New Page Books. It has 370 pages total. It's set up in lessons, not chapters. And it was authored by Oberon Zell Ravenheart. Interesting name. Definitely his magical name. And it will, in the book, in the first few pages, it will explain a little bit of his history and why he wrote the book. Okay. Now, let us move on to the cons. And there's only one con to this book. Now, this book was written, and it's important to keep this in mind, it was written for the ages 11 to 17. So there has a lot of Harry Potter and Lord of the Ring references. And if you're an adult, those references are really annoying when reading this book. But if you can move past that, it really is a great book to read. Now, the major pro to this book is it covers more topics on the practice of magic than I've seen in any other book ever. And most of everything in here is top notch. It really is. It has a lot of useful, practical information. And I'm also talking a little bit faster because there's so much to go over if I expect to squeeze this into 12 to 15 minutes. Quote, a great number of us have been wanting to board the Hogwarts Express and travel to the academy that teaches the real exciting things in life. Things such as magic, herbal law, divination, conjure, and so on. In a word, we have been waiting to learn wizardry. It's one thing to read about the experiences of someone else, even such a fascinating person as Harry Potter, but it's quite another thing to be able to go through the whole magical educational process yourself. To enter such a school and know that your teachers are the very finest wizards and witches in the world would be an awe-inspiring. So, how do you do this? How do you find and attend such a wizardry academy? You'll be happy to know that you don't have to wait for a special invitation to be delivered to you by an owl mail or otherwise. You don't even have to be a child of a wizard or a witch. In fact, you can be a regular muggle child and still get into the school. It has been rumored that even some grown-up muggles have been so attracted to it that they too have slipped in. Whereas the school is right in your hands. The course in wizardry, at least the apprentice level of the course, is contained in this book. Now, as I said, if you can ignore the Harry Potter and Lord of the Ring references, it really is a great book. Putting that aside. All right, let us move on to the meat of the matter. All right, we're going to start with the Glossary of Wizards, Witches, and Mages on pages 3 to 5. Now, this is going to cover a description or what some might consider a label, but these labels are actually very, very important because with a single word, you can describe what your practice is, generally speaking, and you will understand it and you can just move on. You don't have to have a long, wordy explanation. So the things it's going to cover in this section will be wizardry, viziers, mages, sages, mystics, druids, bards, magicians, alchemists, sorcerers, and sorceresses, and I disagree with their definition. It makes us all sound evil, and we're not. So I said, not everything in this book is spot on, but it's pretty close. Enchanters and enchantresses, soothsayers, seers, necromancers, cybermancers, prophets, philosophers, shamans, cunning men / women, witches, Wiccans, pagans, priests, and warlocks. Okay, so this is generally a useful thing because you can at least get a general description of what each of these things do, and it gives you just enough information to understand it. Moving on to the glossary and catalog of psychic talents on pages 31 and 32. I'm not going to cover them all, but as you can see, you will see them on the screen. So there's telepathy, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, clairvoyance, and many more. And I'll give you a description of what each of them do. Telepathy is being able to usually read people's minds, or sometimes it's defined as being able to communicate without words. Telekinesis is being able to move things with your mind. Pyrokinesis, depending on definition, is either can create the flame in your hand or create a flame somewhere, or you can manipulate the flame. And clairvoyance is very broad. It's more like an umbrella term. It covers a lot of different areas of things. Moving on to seeing and raising auras on page 33. Then moves on to the magical exercises, controlling auras on pages 34 and 35. It goes into some useful exercises specifically for shielding and cloaking. And if you remember back from the episode I did on sorcerers that are trained versus those who are naturally born, both can use the techniques of shielding and cloaking, and they really are very useful for really everyone to learn at a bare minimum, because defense is your best offense sometimes. All right, we're going to jump over to page 40, and that's the directory of dreams and symbols. As you can see on the screen, the pictures are very simple and childlike in appearance. When I get done with my series on the three minds, the next series I'm going to go on to is going to be dreams, dream interpretation, how to make a dream key. This is a simple but reasonably accurate depiction of how dream keys are supposed to work. Now we're going to jump over to page 103 to 111. This is going to cover magical tools. It goes into some important information on how to make a wand, and the traditional ways of doing it is from measured from the inside of your elbow to the tip of your middle finger, and that's the correct length of a wand for you, the individual. And because we get taller and as we get much older, we get a little bit shorter, the length of your wand will actually change over the course of your life. It also goes into metal wands. I think it also talks about bone and crystal. I don't remember off the top of my head. Then it goes into chalices and pentacles. Some traditions will use a pentacle to invoke magic itself. It also goes into the ritual knife, the athame, and a few other magical tools. It goes into candlestick holders and incense burners and crystal bowl and the scrying mirror and a few other things. And I'll go over what their elements are and how they're supposed to be used and what they're for. All very useful things overall. Then we're going to jump over to page 136. It's a table of magical correspondences for the elements, as you can see on the screen. Specifically, it's going to go over symbols, colors, tarot cards, time of day, the season, plants, metals, and jewels or crystal stones, minerals, and metals that correspond to each element. It's a very wonderful, it's a simple flow chart, so if you forget anything, that's one of the things I love about this book. It has just so many charts, and so it makes it really easy for you to remember all this stuff. And if you forget anything, just go back, and this makes one of the best references you're going to have. Then we move on to plants, days of the weeks, and chakras on page 137. It shows where each of the chakras correspond to different points on the body. Then on page 138, it's a table of magical correspondences, the planetary days of the week. It's a very useful thing. It covers primarily the elements, the colors, metals, gemstones, trees, plants, incense, and a few other things. On page 139, another table of magical correspondences. This one is for the chakras and how they're useful, and it's a useful thing, and it goes over gemstones, emotions, the elements that the chakras are associated with, and a few other useful things as well. And then we're going to go to page 141. You have a simple chart for the 12 zodiac signs. It's particularly useful, shows you a whole lot of things. I'd say then we're going to jump over to page 145. That's alphabets and magical alphabets. This is useful if you need to translate a foreign language or a magical language into whatever language you speak, read, and or write. Then we're going to move over to page 182, and this should have been on page 139 when you had the chart of the days of the week. And I think this was an oversight on the editor's behalf. But this page is going to show you or teach you about the symbolic meanings of each day of the week and what each day of the week is associated with. And then on page 184, you'll see a chart of the planetary hours. It explains how to calculate the hours, and it has to be done every day. So this chart is only an example of what it's going to look like, because the sun comes up and sets at different times throughout the year. So each day this is going to be pushed over a little bit, and then by an hour, and then several hours. You get the point. So you have to redo this chart realistically every couple of days to make sure you have the correct timing. But it's a really good example, and it makes it very easy how they explain how to do it. Then from pages 188 to 195, it explains the wheel of the year, the 8 different Sabbaths. I would go into greater explanation on this, but I'm running out of time very quickly. On page 199, it gives you an example of white, gray, and black magic. From pages 200 to 202, there are a handful of some very simple rituals for a child, as there's nothing there that can be used for anything harmful or any harmful rituals. Then on page 206, it's the introduction levels of the mind. This goes over the 3 minds in a very small detail. I only really brought it up because I'm going over the series on the 3 minds at the moment. Then moving on to pages 212, 213, and this gives you an explanation of the chakras themselves. And this should have been on page 140. Oversight. I don't know why it was separated like this. Makes no sense. And lastly, on page 278, it goes into the Tree of Life and some basic detail and some basic explanation of the Tree of Life itself. Okay. Now, this video has already gone on longer than I expected, and I've tried to cut it down as much as I can, so I'm just going to end it here. So as always, I wish you all the very best of luck with your research, and go in peace.